The journey invariably begins the same way. She observes you, not for who you authentically are, but for the ideal she conjures in her mind. You sense it in her gaze, don't you? That fleeting spark of potential, or is it a deeper craving? You believe you're being truly seen, yet that's not the reality. You are being assessed, evaluated, scrutinized, a pristine canvas awaiting her artistic vision. But that masterpiece isn't you. It never has been. And Carl Jung, he delivered this caution, not with the soothing whispers of a life coach. No, his warning came with the incisive, almost surgical precision of a scholar who devoted his existence to peering into the psychological depths of the human psyche. Jung's entire career was dedicated to charting what he termed the unconscious, the hidden machinery of the human mind operating beneath conscious awareness, and in his studies he uncovered a profound, almost unsettling truth about women. He found that their affection for men isn't simply a connection to the man himself, but rather an attachment to an idealized construct, a romanticized vision. It's an engagement with an internal projection. And the most unsettling aspect? Many women aren't even aware they're doing it. You might perceive her choice as being about you, but in truth, she is selecting the idealized image of you that she has carefully constructed within her own psyche. A mere psychological figure designed to fulfill a role in her personal narrative, and when you deviate from that pre-written script, she replaces the performer, not the narrative itself. Jung termed this phenomenon the animus, the innate masculine archetype residing within every woman. When this animus remains undeveloped, unrestrained, or immature, it can become a controlling force. It transforms into an invisible influence, driving women to pursue thrilling, yet often detrimental partners, while overlooking genuinely suitable ones. It compels them to engage in arguments without logical basis, to assert dominance without genuine insight, and to impose moral judgments without self-accountability. Jung did not soften this observation. He described it as a form of spiritual possession, a state where a woman becomes oblivious that her actions stem not from her conscious self, but from the powerful, elusive grasp of her inner masculine fantasy. And men, you fall prey to this because you were never taught to discern it. You confuse being desired with being genuinely known. You misinterpret being chosen for being deeply understood. You accept her assertions of your uniqueness, when in reality, you are merely the latest individual cast to play a part she's been rehearsing since her formative years. And when this elaborate fantasy crumbles, when the illusion falters, you are left in a state of bewilderment, feeling betrayed and humiliated, questioning your own actions. But you did nothing wrong. You simply ceased to be a convincing character in someone else's drama. Jung emphasized that the sole escape from this psychological play is through what he called individuation, the lifelong pursuit of achieving inner completeness. And here's the stark reality. Most men never embark on this journey. You have been conditioned to chase validation, to seek external affirmation, to allow women to dictate your inherent worth. And as long as you adhere to this pattern, you will endlessly repeat the same role, replaced whenever the audience loses interest. Individuation is far from glamorous. It is a grueling process. It demands that you confront the hidden aspects of yourself, the vulnerabilities, the insecurities, the broken fragments. It insists that you cease blaming women for their inability to truly perceive you and instead begin to truly see yourself. For here is the profound insight Jung possessed, an insight most men will never grasp. You do not become a man by being selected. You become a man by making your own choice. Your self-worth isn't granted by her affection. It is earned by standing autonomously, fully conscious, fully accountable, utterly alive. A man who has confronted his own subconscious mind cannot be ensnared by projection. He is no longer a pawn in another's fantasy. He is the sovereign author of his own existence. Jung observed that the most profound tragedy facing contemporary men isn't rejection, but rather their willingness to contort themselves into whatever form they believe will garner acceptance. You label it compromise, you define it as partnership, you call it love. But Jung gave it a different name, self-betrayal. He warned that men who neglect their own psychological evolution become subservient to feminine projections. They mold themselves like malleable clay into the forms dictated by women who, paradoxically, don't even comprehend their own genuine desires. You cease to be authentic men and instead become mere masks, smiling, assenting, complying, performing, until you completely forget the person you were before donning the disguise. And women, they instinctively perceive this. Indeed, they sense it with far greater acuity than you could ever imagine. The very qualities you believe will secure her affection, your obedience, your predictability, your constant availability, become the precise reasons she eventually loses interest. Why? Because the feminine instinct, as Jung elucidated, is not drawn to comfort or certainty. It is captivated by enigma, by challenge, by the man she cannot fully decipher or control. The instant you make yourself entirely transparent, devoid of personal boundaries or inner fortitude, you don't become more appealing. You become indistinct, expendable, replaceable. And yet, herein lies the cruel paradox that keeps most men in psychological bondage. Your fear of solitude outweighs your fear of inauthenticity. You would sooner sacrifice your true self than risk losing her. You would prefer to inhabit a predefined role than to confront the terrifying silence of standing unapplauded. But Jung taught that until a man embraces that profound solitude, he can never achieve true liberation. He penned that individuation is a path not for the timid, for it demands a metaphorical death before your physical demise, a burning away of the false identities you've assumed, so that an authentic self can finally emerge. But allow me to articulate a truth that few dare to utter aloud. Individuation is a lonely journey, profoundly and terrifyingly lonely. As you progress along this path, you begin to perceive realities that, once seen, cannot be unseen. You start to recognize the intricate charades people play, the elaborate masks they wear, the self-deceptions they cling to simply to feel secure, and when you attempt to share these uncomfortable insights, they scoff, they label you as detached, arrogant, overly serious. They accuse you of being the problem, but you are not the problem, you are simply the mirror. And individuals often recoil from the mirror when it reveals aspects of themselves they wish to ignore. Jung understood this deeply. He spent decades observing patients who were paralyzed by fear at the prospect of confronting their own shadow, the suppressed, undesirable aspects of their psyche they refused to acknowledge. And women, Jung cautioned, are frequently raised in societal frameworks that reward them for sidestepping such internal confrontations. They are told they are inherently pure, emotionally attuned, intuitive, and complete just as they are. But Jung vehemently disagreed. He wrote that the gravest peril to women was their unconscious animus, the internal voice that speaks with deceptive certainty, false authority, and an unwarranted sense of moral superiority. He warned that if a woman fails to confront and integrate this powerful inner masculine force, she becomes enslaved by it, projecting it onto every man she encounters, holding them accountable for the very internal conflict she refuses to address within herself. And here you are, believing yourself to be her savior, convinced you'll be the rare exception. You imagine that if you only love her with enough intensity, assert your worth loudly enough, perform to a high enough standard, she will finally choose the real you. But that's not how the mechanism of projection operates. Jung taught that projection is a deceptive force. It pilfers reality and substitutes it with illusion. And until both men and women awaken from this pervasive illusion, they are doomed to endlessly replay the same tragic patterns, each blaming the other, never truly grasping that they are both merely dancing with figments of their own minds. And here lies the most profound irony of all. The woman who once revered you as her hero will, inevitably, come to view you as her adversary, not because you fundamentally altered, but because you failed to perfectly embody the idealized fantasy she imposed upon you, and she won't even consciously realize the source of her resentment. Jung labeled this psychological betrayal as an unavoidable outcome when neither party assumes responsibility for their own internal landscape. You didn't intentionally deceive her, you didn't deliberately betray her, you simply fell short of the invisible character she fabricated in her unconscious mind. You were never that ideal from the outset. And that's precisely why she harbors resentment towards you, not for your genuine imperfections, but for your inability to fully live up to a mythical role she never explicitly assigned you. Jung once remarked, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." And nowhere is this statement more acutely true than within romantic partnerships. Both men and women enter these relationships not as fully integrated individuals, but as walking projections, dragging their unaddressed fears, their unfulfilled needs, and their unresolved childhood wounds into the embrace of another person they scarcely comprehend. You may call it love, but Jung labeled it possession, and like a man mesmerized, you repeatedly step into the same trap, convinced that this time the outcome will be different. But it never is, because you haven't yet dared to ask the most daunting question a man can pose to himself. What if I am the one ultimately responsible for this recurring pattern? You yearn to cast blame upon women. You wish to characterize them as manipulative, deceitful, superficial. But Jung would meet your gaze directly and inquire, and why then did you allow yourself to be chosen by that particular woman in the first place? You see, the man who consistently evades confronting his own inner feminine world is destined to remain subjugated to hers. You are not a helpless victim. You are a willing participant. You elected to play the fool. You opted to be the actor in her personal mythology because confronting your own internal void, your own sense of incompleteness, felt infinitely more terrifying than performing a part in someone else's fantasy. And here is where the majority of you will cease listening, because this is where comfort gives way to responsibility. Jung did not offer facile solutions. He did not provide a three-step guide to achieving alpha male dominance. Instead, he presented the arduous, lifelong challenge of self-confrontation, of sitting in solitary silence within your own mind until the illusions begin to fracture, until the internal monologue that insists you are nothing without her starts to fade. And make no mistake, that voice will vehemently fight for its existence. It will whisper that you desperately need her, that you are incomplete without her, that no man can truly thrive without feminine affirmation. But Jung's body of work suggests something far more profound and challenging. It whispers that the man who can stand autonomously, without her, without external approval, without applause, without the need to be needed, is the man who has finally achieved true freedom, free from the shackles of projection, free from the burden of performance, free from the tyranny of living as another's interpretation of what a man should be. And when you arrive at that profound state, you don't become emotionally cold or detached. You become authentic. You become deeply rooted, grounded, fully vibrant in your own being. And it is precisely then, paradoxically, that women will feel the most powerfully drawn to you, not because you require them, but precisely because you don't. And you will smile, not out of callousness, but because you have finally attained true understanding. You comprehend that she, too, is on her own solitary journey, that she must confront her own animus, that she must awaken from her own self-created illusions. And you cannot undertake that work on her behalf. You cannot rescue her from herself. You can only emulate Jung's example. Walk your own path with such fearless authenticity that you become a living mirror, reflecting the unvarnished truth back to everyone who dares to look. Most will avert their gaze, but a select few, a truly rare minority, will express their gratitude. And that, my friend, is the fundamental distinction between being loved for the role you inhabit and being genuinely respected for the man you have become. And when that transformative moment arrives, when you at last realize you no longer need to perform, you'll begin to notice a peculiar shift. You'll observe the discomfort that people experience in your presence. They'll sense it, even if they lack the words to articulate it. The gravity of your authentic presence will disquiet them, because you no longer fit neatly into the predictable categories they rely on for a sense of security. Jung warned that the individuated man is rarely embraced by society. He is feared, misunderstood, often labeled as aloof or arrogant. But the underlying truth is far more unsettling. You have simply become impervious, unreachable, uncorruptible, unmanipulable, because you now perceive the underlying dynamics of the game. And here's where the irony deepens. The very individuals who once pleaded for your attention, your validation, your approval, will begin to harbor resentment towards you for your lack of need for theirs. Women, particularly those still ensnared by the fantasy of the ideal man, will accuse you of being emotionally distant. They'll claim you are too intellectual, too analytical, too withdrawn. But what they truly mean is that they can no longer exert control over you. You have exited the stage. You have ceased to read from their script. And without that predefined script, they are at a loss as to how to engage with you, because you have transcended the role of a mere character and fully embodied the essence of a man. Jung once quipped that The gods have become diseases, implying that what ancient cultures attributed to divine possession, modern psychology diagnoses as neurosis. And let there be no misunderstanding. Men who perpetually chase external validation are, spiritually, among the most ailing. You believe you are expressing romance when you utter phrases like, "I'd do anything for her," or "she is my entire world." But Jung would unequivocally shake his head, asserting that what you label as love is, in essence, a profound refusal to bear the weight of your own soul. It is far simpler to project it onto a woman, burdening her with the responsibility for your aspirations, your sense of purpose, your very meaning. Because if she carries it, you are absolved of the task. But here is the stark, brutal reality. When she comprehends that she was never intended to carry the burden of your soul, she will release it. She must release it, because no woman, regardless of the depth of her affection, can sustain the immense weight of a man who declines to bear himself. And when she relinquishes that burden, you will experience a sense of betrayal. But you should not. Instead, you should offer her gratitude, because in that precise moment, as the illusion shatters, you finally stand face to face with the undeniable truth. The arduous work of becoming a man was never hers to accomplish. It was, from the very beginning, exclusively yours. And in that raw, crystalline moment of clarity, two distinct paths lie before you. You can choose to blame her. You can allow bitterness to consume you. You can join the embittered chorus of men who cast accusatory fingers at women, deriding them, resenting them, renouncing them like cowards who never dared to confront their own internal emptiness. Or you can embrace the demanding path Jung himself advocated. You can turn inward. You can embark upon the lonely, terrifying, yet profoundly liberating work of individuation, of achieving inner completeness without the desperate need for another to fill your voids. Because the truth is, the woman you so fervently seek outside yourself is merely a reflection of a part of your own being that you have forsaken. Until you confront and integrate that abandoned aspect, every relationship will remain a theatrical performance, every connection a transactional exchange, every declaration of love a lie. But when you do finally face it, when you integrate your own inner feminine, you transform into a man who no longer feels compelled to chase women. You do not pursue them. You do not manipulate them. You do not perform for their approval. You stand immovably, deeply rooted in your authentic self. And from that profound state, something truly miraculous unfolds. You no longer attract women who seek a character to fill a role. You attract women who genuinely desire the truth, and you will instantly recognize this profound shift when it occurs, because she will not demand that you play a part. She will not attempt to rewrite your script. She will not fall in love with a fabricated fantasy of you. She will stand before you, in her raw and authentic self, not as a goddess demanding worship, but as a fellow human being willing to walk her own path alongside yours. No masks, no projections, no manipulative games, and when you encounter her, the genuine her, not the idealized fantasy, you will discern the difference instantaneously. She will not overwhelm you with grand pronouncements. She will not treat you as the missing piece of her personal puzzle. She will not attempt to entice you with the language of completion, because she is not seeking to be completed. She is not seeking to be saved. She has already undertaken the arduous work. She has confronted her own shadow. She has wrestled with her own animus. She has burned away her own self-deceptions. And that is why she will not require you to perform. She will not need you to carry the weight of her soul. She will stand there, whole in her own being, looking you in the eye not as a man she desires to sculpt, but as a man she is finally prepared to genuinely meet. And in that authentic encounter, there is no desperation. There is no clinging. There is no performance. There is only unvarnished truth. And that truth, Jung taught, represents the rarest and most perilous form of love, the kind that demands nothing yet offers everything, because it is not born of necessity. It is born of profound freedom, freedom to choose, freedom to walk away, freedom to stand together without illusions, without masks, without fear. But allow me to impart a solemn warning. The vast majority of you will never experience this profound connection, because most of you will abandon the journey before reaching its culmination. You will settle for the theatrical performance. You will settle for the comforting fantasy. You will settle for the fleeting thrill of being perceived as someone you are not, because confronting your true self still feels utterly intolerable. But if you possess the sheer, brutal, gut-wrenching courage to persevere, to continue standing alone, to relentlessly strip away every false layer you've constructed to earn external approval, you will eventually find yourself poised on the precipice of something terrifyingly beautiful. You will discover yourself. And when you achieve that, women will cease to be the primary source of your identity. They will no longer serve as the mirror you use to confirm your masculinity. They will evolve into something entirely different. Partners, not trophies. Reflections, not surrogate mothers. Allies, not saviors. And you will love them not out of a desperate need, but out of a conscious choice, stemming from a place of intrinsic strength, from a place of profound wholeness, from a place that unapologetically knows exactly who you are. Carl Jung did not bequeath you a definitive roadmap to follow. He left you a stark warning, a warning that every man who refuses to confront his own inner self will inevitably become enslaved by the projections of others, most especially the projections of women. But he also left you a profound challenge, a challenge to bravely walk the path of individuation, to cease blaming women for the roles you voluntarily inhabit, to stop seeking wholeness in the approving gaze of another, to stop passively waiting to be chosen, because the man who actively chooses himself, fully, unapologetically, relentlessly, is the man who cannot be controlled by fantasy. He cannot be seduced by performance. He cannot be reduced to a mere character in someone else's script. He becomes the undisputed author of his own life. And if you've journeyed this far, if this message resonated deeply within you, do not simply scroll away. Do not allow this to be just another piece of content you consume and promptly forget. Take a moment right now to like this video, share it with another man who desperately needs to hear this unvarnished truth, and subscribe for more insights. Your support extends beyond merely helping us. It reaches the next man who is still living within the illusion, patiently awaiting his liberation. Help us amplify this crucial message. Help us awaken the world, one man at a time.